They called my name that night, but not the way I expected. At the church banquet where everyone still calls me Mother Evelyn, my granddaughter stood at the microphone and thanked another woman as the real matriarch of our family. That's how betrayal sounds in a room full of applause. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. If your own family thanked another woman for your life's work, what would you do? Say justice out loud if you'd fight quietly like I did, or whisper boundaries if you'd walk away and start over. And if stories like this speak to you, subscribe, because sometimes quiet justice deserves to be heard. I was smiling when she said it, the kind of smile you keep steady because if it cracks, everything inside you will spill out. She said, "We owe everything to Mississippi Mara Lane. She saved our home and our business." The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. And I, the woman who built that home and that business brick by brick and batch by batch, sat 2 tables from the stage holding a paper napkin like it was armor. The fellowship hall smelled of buttered rolls and floral candles. Gold balloons brushed the ceiling fans. Every pew-born neighbor from Savannah to Tybee Island was there for the church's centennial celebration. I'd spent weeks helping decorate, tying ribbons until my fingers ached, baking 3 sheet pans of pecan cobbler. They'd even printed my name on the program, honorary founder of Carter's Oven. But now my name meant nothing. My granddaughter Lila's thank you belonged to someone else. Mara Lane sat in the front row, radiant and polished, wearing an ivory blazer that whispered money. She dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief as if the words, "true family," wounded her with kindness. The pastor nodded approvingly. The crowd murmured, "Bless her." And I watched, silent, invisible, wondering when I became background to my own legacy. I built Carter's Oven with my late husband Harold in 1979. Back then our storefront was a single brick room with 1 fan and no air conditioning. Harold mixed dough by hand while I took orders with a rotary phone pressed between my shoulder and ear. By the 1990s, our honey bun recipe was feeding half the county. Every school fundraiser, every church wedding, we donated something sweet. That's what they meant by family business. But now the family had new hands steering it, hands manicured and ringed with diamond-cut ambition. When the speeches ended, people lined up for photos. I stood to fix my shawl when one of the deacon's wives leaned close and whispered, "Miss Evelyn, it's such a blessing Mara kept the bakery from foreclosure." Her voice was syrup, but her eyes were sharp. "Foreclosure?" I asked. She blinked like she realized she'd stepped on glass. "Oh, you didn't know? Well, praise God for her generosity." Then she floated off to the buffet table before I could catch another word. I sat back down slowly. My heart thudded against the lace trim of my blouse. Foreclosure? I hadn't missed a mortgage payment since 2008. The bakery was paid off long before Harold passed. Something didn't fit. I looked across the room and saw Mara laughing with the pastor's wife, holding an iPad displaying a new digital donation link. At the bottom of the page was a logo I'd never seen before, Magnolia Homestead Trust. My stomach clenched. Under it, in small print, were the words "Custodians of Carter Legacy Holdings." I excused myself, smiling for politeness, and walked to the ladies' lounge. My reflection stared back from the mirror under soft fluorescent lights. Silver curls pinned neatly, lipstick fading at the edges, eyes clouded not with age but with disbelief. I whispered, "What have they done?" In the parking lot, I waited for Lila. When she came out with her fiancé, I waved her over. She looked surprised. "Grandma, are you okay? You left early." I asked about the trust. Her eyes darted away. "Oh, that. Mara set it up to help with taxes and renovations. It's just paperwork." I pressed, "Why would renovations need the deed to my house?" She hesitated. "Grandma, you said last year you wanted us to handle things if anything happened to you." I remembered being in a hospital bed after gallbladder surgery, counting ceiling tiles while they changed my floor. My hand had been wrapped in tape. My signature could have been anyone's. A cold wave ran through me. Lila hugged me quickly, already glancing toward her fiancé's car. "We'll talk tomorrow, okay? Mara's waiting for us." Then she jogged away in her heels, laughter trailing behind her like perfume. I drove home under the moss-covered oaks, headlights slicing through fog. Savannah nights are heavy. They smell of rain and secrets. When I reached my porch, the motion light flickered on. The brass plate that once read Carter Residence was gone, replaced by a sleek black one engraved Magnolia Homestead Trust, managed by Lane. My knees almost gave out. I gripped the doorframe to keep from falling. Inside, everything looked the same. The framed photos, Harold's fishing rods, the jar of sugar cookies cooling on the counter. Yet nothing felt familiar. I opened the kitchen drawer where we kept important mail. Bills, coupons, tax notices. But the latest property tax envelope was addressed to Magnolia Homestead Trust. Attention, trustee. My name was nowhere. I poured a glass of water, hands shaking so hard half of it spilled. I stared at the rippling surface and thought about all the years I'd believed loyalty protected you. I used to tell Lila, family can argue but family don't steal. Tonight I wasn't sure that sentence meant anything. I sat at the table, the same table Harold and I bought secondhand in 1981, and unfolded the church program again. On the back, under community sponsors, was a QR code for donations. I scanned it with my phone. A page opened listing donors and trustees. Mara Lane, chair. Tasha Carter, co-trustee. My daughter's name. My own flesh and blood. It felt like someone had poured cold batter straight through my veins. I scrolled further and saw images from the banquet already uploaded. Lila on stage, Mara smiling, captions filled with hearts and gratitude. Under one photo was a comment that finished the knife twist. Couldn't have done it without Miss Mara saving Grandma's house. That night I didn't sleep. The ceiling fans spun lazy circles while I sat counting betrayals instead of sheep. My phone buzzed once. An automated alert from the county clerk's office. Transfer of property, Carter residence, filed. The timestamp was 2 weeks after my surgery. I whispered to the dark, they think I'm too old to notice. Then I remembered Harold's voice from decades ago, playful but firm. Eve, keep every receipt. Paper never forgets. I reached under the sink for the tin where I kept our old tax records, brushing off flour dust and spider webs. Inside were decades of documents, mortgage releases, bank slips, and the original deed signed in blue fountain ink. My name glowed faintly under the lamp like a truth buried but breathing. I laid it beside the printed screenshot from the trust website. 2 different owners for the same house. One honest, one forged. The kind of contradiction that makes a woman trade grief for resolve. Before dawn I brewed strong coffee, pulled out a yellow notebook and wrote 3 lines at the top of the first page. Find out what they changed. Prove it. Take it back. The magnolia tree outside was shedding white petals onto the porch like soft snow. I watched them fall and whispered, they started this at a celebration, but I'll end it in silence. Tomorrow I'd start with the courthouse. Tonight I let the kettle whistle one last time and told myself, steady, certain, unbroken, they may have erased my name, but I'm still here. The morning after that banquet, sunlight crept across my kitchen table like it didn't know it was shining on broken things. I hadn't slept. The coffee in my cup was cold, but I kept sipping it, tasting the bitterness as proof that I was still here. Before I could fight for this house, I had to remember what it truly was. Not lumber and plaster, but 45 years of breath, flour, and sacrifice. Harold and I bought the land in 1979. Back when the bank clerk said a colored couple shouldn't waste money on a swamp lot. We cleared it ourselves on weekends, swatting mosquitoes the size of nickels. Harold poured the foundation with his bare hands, humming the same blues line over and over. One day this house gone sing for us. When the inspector came, he laughed at our uneven porch steps. Crooked, he said. Harold winked and replied, just enough for luck. That porch is still standing. Inside those first walls, we planned everything. The bakery, the kids we hadn't had yet, the kind of Sundays we wanted. I handled numbers, he handled dreams. He'd say, Eve, you keep the world balanced while I make it sweet. That's how Carter's oven was born. From 2 pairs of hands and one stubborn belief that honest work could feed dignity. By 1983 we had our daughter, Tasha. I still remember mixing dough with one hand and rocking her cradle with the other. The smell of cinnamon rolls became her lullaby. When she started school, we added a second oven, bought used from a hotel auction. Harold painted it cherry red just so customers would remember it. They did. The line stretched down the block every Easter. The bakery grew with her. So did our debt. Each expansion came with another signature, another promise. But we made every payment, sometimes by working through the night. When Harold's back gave out in his 50s, I took double shifts and told him not to worry. As long as I've got flour under my nails, we'll be fine, I said. And for a long while we were. Then came the day Harold's heart failed right there in the kitchen. He was kneading bread, telling a joke about taxes, and then he just stopped. The paramedic said it was quick. I still hear the oven timer beeping that day, like time itself refused to turn off. After the funeral, the town sent casseroles, but the silence that followed was heavier than grief. I kept the bakery open because it was the only heartbeat left in the house. Tasha came home to help with bookkeeping. She was good with computers and promised to modernize everything. "Mama," she said, "you need someone who speaks this new language, emails, online orders, all that." I was proud. She had Harold's charm and my grit. But change moves faster than trust. She started consulting with outsiders, people who called themselves business advisors. One of them was a tall woman with caramel hair and pearl earrings, Maura Lane. I met her one April morning. She walked into the bakery smelling of gardenias, holding a folder like it was a prize. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "your daughter speaks highly of you. I help small businesses like yours secure protection trusts, for legacy and tax efficiency." Her words sounded important, wrapped in kindness. She bought a honey bun, took one bite, and smiled like she'd discovered gold. "You're sitting on generational wealth," she said. I laughed. "All I'm sitting on is a squeaky stool." But something about her tone made Tasha beam. From that day on, Maura became a fixture, dropping by with charts, spreadsheets, promises of grants and investors. I should have noticed how she always used "we" instead of "you." "We'll protect the property, we'll secure the deed, we'll file the paperwork." That "we" was the rope she used to tie knots around my legacy. But at the time, I saw her as my daughter's helper, a modern blessing. When I caught the flu one winter, Maura even brought soup and sat with me, reading forms aloud as if helping an old woman understand her own future. That's when she mentioned a homestead trust. I remember signing a few lines while half asleep. She said it was for emergency management if I got too sick to handle paperwork. I believed her. Looking back, that's when the shift began. Tasha started spending evenings at Maura's office downtown, saying they were finalizing partnerships. The bakery's name appeared on new flyers. Carter's Oven, a Magnolia Homestead brand. I didn't mind at first, I thought it was a marketing trick. But small details changed. Maura's photo beside ours in newsletters, her name on supplier invoices. People began calling her the new owner. I laughed it off, unaware of the signatures already filed. The more I trusted them, the smaller my role became. The bakery I'd built turned into a backdrop for their ambitions. Tasha bought a new car. Lila, my granddaughter, enrolled in a business program Maura recommended. "She's teaching me everything," Lila said proudly. I told her, "Just remember who taught your mama to count." She giggled, thinking it was a joke. But deep down, something uneasy stirred. The feeling that I was slowly being retired from my own life. Last spring, I slipped on wet tiles at the bakery and tore a ligament. The doctor insisted on surgery. I hated hospitals, the smell of bleach, the beep of machines. But Maura handled everything. "Rest easy, Mother Evelyn," she said sweetly, using the same title the church gave me. "We'll take care of the paperwork." Lying there under anesthesia, I had no idea that the pen signing over my property was moving at that very moment in another room. Now sitting in this kitchen, I trace the wood grain of the table we bought the year we opened. It's dented from rolling pins and homework pencils, but it's ours. Or at least it used to be. I think of all the birthdays we celebrated here. Harold's laughter booming through the hall, Tasha sneaking frosting from the bowl, little Lila clapping her flower-covered hands. We built this house with joy, and now strangers hold the keys. But no matter what paper says, this home remembers me. The walls know my prayers. The oven still hums my husband's tune. When I walk across the floorboards, they creak like old friends whispering, "We saw everything." That gives me strength. Paper might have stolen the deed, but memory holds the title. Tomorrow I'll visit the courthouse to pull records like Harold once taught me. If they buried the truth under legal words, I'll dig through every line. They think age makes a woman slow, but grief sharpens the eyes. I may not move fast, but I move steady. And steady is what wins when storms come. The kettle whistles. I turn off the burner and breathe in the smell of coffee. Real, dark, honest. This house was built on those things. And before I let anyone rename it, they'll have to face the woman who remembers exactly how every brick got here. I thought the courthouse would smell like justice, but it only smelled like dust and copier ink. The clerk at the records desk looked young enough to be Lila's classmate. She chewed gum while I slid my ID across the counter and said, "Ma'am, I need a copy of every document with my name and this address on it." She raised an eyebrow. You mean your former address? I froze. Former. She tapped her keyboard, eyes flicking between screens. According to county files, the property transferred 9 months ago. New owner, Magnolia Homestead Trust. Her voice softened, maybe because she saw my hands start to shake. Do you want me to print the transfer packet? I nodded. The printer coughed out 27 pages that would change the way I saw everyone I loved. The first page was a quitclaim deed, dated April 12th, 2 weeks after my surgery. My signature sat there in blue ink, smooth, confident, not trembling like the handwriting of a woman who'd just come out of anesthesia. Under witnesses, there were 2 names I'd never heard before. Under notary, it read Sable Creek Advisors LLC. I stared at that paper so long the clerk asked if I needed a chair. I whispered, "No, honey. I just need the truth." I drove home with the packet on the passenger seat, the edges fluttering every time I hit a bump. Each page felt heavier than the one before. Loan consolidations, emergency authorizations, even a medical directive naming Mara Lane as temporary financial custodian. I could taste metal in my mouth. Somewhere between the painkillers and the recovery room, they'd built a trap with my own handwriting. At the kitchen table, I laid the papers side by side with my real signature, the one on my old driver's license. The differences screamed at me. The loops were tighter, the slant different. Whoever forged it had practiced, studied me like homework. I called my daughter Tasha. "Baby, I just came from the courthouse." Silence on the line. "Mama, don't start. Don't start," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did you know about this deed?" She sighed. "Mama, Mar explained everything. You were tired. We needed to protect the business while you recovered." Protect. My laugh cracked. Protect means you ask before you sign my life away. "Mama, please," she said, voice rising. "You always say you trust me. Mar just made it official. Everything's still in the family." "Whose family?" I asked. "Hers or mine?" She didn't answer. The call ended with that hollow click that sounds like a door locking from the other side. I sat there listening to the refrigerator hum. Betrayal doesn't roar. It hums low and steady until you finally hear it. That night I couldn't eat. I spread the papers across the table like puzzle pieces and searched for seams of truth. The notary address led to a UPS store mailbox downtown. The witnesses' names weren't in the phone book, not even on Facebook. But one stamp kept appearing, Mabel and Tide Holdings LLC. I googled it. A consultancy. Registered agent. Mara Lane. So that's how she did it, through layers of polite paperwork, each stamped with words like trust and benefit until the theft looked like kindness. By dawn my eyes burned from reading, but sleep wouldn't come. I brewed coffee and pulled out the yellow notebook again. Under the last line, "Take it back," I added a 4th. "Find the witnesses." The next morning I drove to the hospital. The same nurse from my surgery recognized me at reception. "Mrs. Carter." "Feeling better." "Trying to," I said. "Can you tell me who visited me after my operation?" He checked the file. "Let's see. Your daughter came twice. A woman named Mara Lane signed in once, and a notary named Darlene Keats stopped by for discharge papers." My chest tightened. "Did I sign anything that day?" She nodded. "Standard post-op documents." She hesitated. "But you were still pretty groggy, remember?" I remembered nothing except counting ceiling tiles and hearing Harold's voice telling me to rest. I asked for a copy of my discharge sheet. At the bottom was a shaky signature that looked closer to mine, tilted, uneven, and right beside it the same notary stamp. That meant they'd scanned my real signature from the hospital forms and used it to forge the property transfer. I left the hospital parking lot trembling, gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. For 40 years I believed paperwork was honest because I never imagined paper could be a knife. When I got home, a letter waited in the mailbox, embossed, elegant. Inside was an invitation to the Savannah Women in Business Gala, hosted by none other than Mara Lane and Tasha Carter. The theme, legacy and leadership. My bakery's logo sat at the bottom, right beside theirs. I laughed out loud, a dry sound that scared even me. They were celebrating the theft before I'd even finished bleeding. I walked straight to the bedroom closet and pulled down Harold's old lockbox. Inside, under his war medals and insurance papers, was a tiny envelope labeled House Deed 1979. I unfolded the original. His signature, my signature, blue fountain ink. The difference between real and fake was as wide as the years between then and now. I touched the paper and whispered, I still have proof you existed. That night I called an old neighbor, Mr. Whitaker, retired postal inspector, sharp as ever. Whit, I said, you still got friends in records? He chuckled. You found trouble, didn't you, Eve? Trouble found me. I told him everything, the forged deed, the trust, the gala. He listened, quiet. When I finished, he said, bring me copies. I'll look at the notary number. If it's fake, we'll trace it. For the first time in weeks, I felt the faint rhythm of hope. Not loud, not triumphant, just steady like Harold's humming when he mixed dough. I made copies that same night, labeling each one carefully. Deed, power of attorney, witness list. I packed them into a manila folder and wrote one more line in my notebook. The truth doesn't hide forever. When I finally turned off the kitchen light, the magnolia outside swayed in the wind, petals scattering across the porch. I whispered to it like it was an old friend. They think his signature makes something theirs. But this house remembers the hands that built it. The next morning I woke before the sun. Sleep had turned into a stranger that no longer visited this house. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon from yesterday's baking, though I hadn't touched the spice rack since the banquet. Funny how scent lingers longer than love sometimes. I set out the papers again, every page like a crime scene, and thought if they planned it in the open, the crumbs would be neat. Thieves leave messy kitchens. So I started looking for crumbs. I began with the bakery's accounts. The password was still the same one Harold made up decades ago. Sweet Truth 79. When I logged in, the balance looked fine at first glance. But buried among routine flour and sugar invoices were small transfers labeled consulting fees to a company I'd never hired. Maple and Tide Holdings. The name matched the one stamped on the forged deed. I clicked deeper. The payments always came through at odd hours. 2:07 a.m., 3:22 a.m., like guilt had its own time zone. The amounts weren't large, just enough to go unnoticed by anyone who trusted her family. Over 8 months, they added up to nearly $25,000. I printed the statements and laid them beside the other evidence. My kitchen table had turned into a detective's desk. I brewed coffee and watched steam curl over the papers. Harold would have teased me, said I looked like one of those crime show ladies he used to watch after dinner. I smiled despite myself. Well, Harold, I whispered, this episode's ours. Before heading to Mr. Whitaker's, I opened the old spice cabinet to grab a jar of cinnamon for comfort. Behind it, taped to the back wall, I noticed a tiny brass key wrapped in wax paper. Harold's handwriting was on the note, in case of storms. I knew exactly what it opened, the small safe in our attic crawl space. I hadn't touched it in years, not since he passed. I climbed the attic ladder, each rung creaking like it wanted to warn me. Dust glittered in the morning light. The safe sat in its corner under a stack of Christmas tins. The key slid in smooth like it had been waiting. Inside were tax folders, an old cigar box, and something I hadn't seen in decades. A yellowed envelope stamped paid in full, Carter residence mortgage. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. The balance read 0, dated 15 years ago. I remembered that day. Harold had framed the bank receipt and called it our second wedding anniversary gift. Now it felt like a ghost's testimony, proof that nobody could honestly claim to have saved this house from foreclosure. But under that envelope was something even stranger. A crumpled receipt made out to Maple and Tide Holdings for consulting support. Amount, $2,500. Payee signature, Tasha Carter. My heart sank. My own daughter's name. Maybe she didn't understand what she was signing. Maybe she did. Either way, the betrayal wore her handwriting. I took everything, slid it into my tote, and drove to Whitaker's place. His porch smelled like pipe smoke and rain. The man hadn't changed since retirement. Suspenders, thick glasses, and a mind like barbed wire. You brought the goods? He asked. I nodded and spread the pages across his coffee table. He studied them, tapping a pencil on his notepad. You got yourself a nice little chain of custody here, he said. See these transfers? Same timestamps, same intermediary account. That's how they rinse money. Small, frequent, boring. He looked up. You said this Mara runs a trust? Yes. Magnolia Homestead. He whistled low. Those things sound friendly, but they hide sharks. We'll need a forensic eye. He dialed someone on speaker. Priya, it's Whit. Got a neighbor in a situation. Think you can spare a Sunday? The woman on the other end agreed without hesitation. Send me copies, she said. I love catching crooks in pearls. I liked her already. That afternoon Priya arrived, mid-30s, bright-eyed, hair in a neat bun. She spread out her laptop and began tracing transactions the way a baker folds dough. Calm, exact. Maple and Tide, she murmured, feeds into a foundation account. Look here. The same foundation that owns your property trust. She turned the screen toward me. Mara Lane Foundation, Magnolia Homestead Trust, cashier's checks, personal account. Every arrow led back to Mara. Priya sat back. This isn't sloppy embezzlement. It's architecture. She built a shell inside your own company. Whitaker leaned forward. Question is, who signed her access? Priya clicked again. Tasha Carter, secondary administrator. The words hit like a hammer. I closed my eyes. "My daughter," I whispered. Priya's voice softened. "Ma'am, manipulation works best on good people." She probably thought it was legitimate. We printed every chart. Whitaker promised to send them to a friend in the district attorney's elder exploitation unit. They don't move fast, he warned, but once they smell forged ink, they bite hard. I thanked them both and headed home as twilight settled over Savannah. The streetlights blinked on one by one. When I parked, the magnolia tree by my porch glowed white under the bulbs, petals scattered like fallen promises. I carried the folder inside and placed it on Harold's old chair. The house felt different tonight. Less heavy, more alert, like it knew I was finally fighting back. I reheated leftover cobbler and ate standing up the way I used to when the bakery got busy. Each bite steadied me. The sweetness didn't hide the bitterness, but it balanced it. That's all life ever promised, really, balance. When the clock struck 10, I opened my yellow notebook again and wrote, "Crumbs found. Trail begins." Underneath I added a quote Harold used to say when things got tough. A good recipe forgives mistakes, but it never forgets ingredients. Mara's ingredients were greed and deceit, and I was done letting them rise. Before bed, I sealed all the papers in plastic sleeves. Then I placed Harold's mortgage receipt right on top. It felt like armor. Tomorrow I call Priya again. If this house was a crime scene, I'd make sure every fingerprint pointed exactly where it belonged. I turned off the light and stood by the window. The night air carried the faint smell of cinnamon from the bakery down the street. Maybe it was imagination, maybe memory. Either way, it whispered to me, keep going. And I will. Because no matter how neatly they baked this lie, they left crumbs. And I intend to follow every single one. Sunday brunch used to be our soft place. A table by the window at the riverfront cafe where sunlight turned the water into broken glass, and the waitress knew to bring extra napkins because butter runs faster than conversation. I arrived early and ordered 2 lemon waters, one for me and one for the girl I taught to slice peaches without wasting the good parts. Tasha walked in 10 minutes late, pearls shining like tiny moons against a cream blouse, phone in her hand like a second heartbeat. "Hey, Mama," she said, quick hug, perfume of white tea and a rush of air that didn't settle. "You look tired. Are you sleeping?" "I sleep fine when people leave what's mine alone," I said, smiling just enough to keep it civil. "Sit, baby. We have paper to talk about." Her eyes flicked toward the door, calculating the length of this conversation. "If this is about the trust, Mara already explained." "This isn't about what Mara explained," I said, laying the manila folder on the table. "This is about what you signed." The waitress brought shrimp and grits for her. A biscuit for me because grief shrinks appetite before it grows resolve. I slid the first page across. The quitclaim deed. Tasha didn't touch it, just stared like it was a photograph she wished would blur itself. "I don't remember this day," I said. "But the county does. 2 weeks after my surgery, my signature moved my house into a trust one never asked for. Your name is here as witness. Tell me how that happened." She pulled her hands into her lap. "Mama, you were recovering. We were drowning. Vendors were threatening to cut us off, payroll was late, the roof needed patching again. Mara said the trust would keep everything safe while we stabilized the bakery. It was temporary." "Temporary like a tattoo," I said softly. "You signed because she asked. Not because you read." Tasha bristled. "I did read what I could." She showed me examples. "Everyone uses trusts now." It was responsible. I took a slow breath. Responsible looks a lot like invisible when the person it belongs to isn't in the room. The river sent up a breeze that lifted the corner of the deed. Tasha pressed it down with 2 fingers. She always had pianist hands, long and careful, the kind that could measure a cup of flour by weight. Those same fingers had steadied her daughter's first bicycle and now steadied a paper that cut me. "Mama, Mara saved us when you couldn't," she said, voice lowering. "Last fall we had 2 weeks where the account was under $300. She advanced money, brought in catering clients, renegotiated the flour contract. You don't see what it took." I slid the second document over. A bank statement. "I see small transfers to a company you never hired at 2:07 a.m. and 3:22 a.m. I see consulting fees that went into her foundation and then into the trust that stole my name off the porch. I see your signature as secondary administrator on our POS system. I see every crumb because thieves don't clean like they cook." Tasha's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Fair is a swing, not a scale," I said, keeping my tone even. "I'm not measuring feelings. I'm measuring facts." The waitress set down the check even though we hadn't asked. She sensed weather. Tasha pushed her plate away, food mostly untouched. "You always do this," she said, not loudly, but with the worn grooves of a daughter who believes she's been auditioning for approval since birth. "You always make sacrifice sound like love's only language. Mara understands that the world changed. She showed me we could be more." "More what?" I asked. "More polished? More photographed? Because if you mean more secure, I have a mortgage receipt marked paid in full for 15 years. We didn't need a savior. We needed a steward." Her eyes shone and I couldn't tell if it was anger or shame. Maybe both. She lifted the deed again, scanning it for a line that could rescue her from herself. "It's not like she pocketed money," she said finally. "Everything we did was legal." "Legal and right ain't twins," I said. "Sometimes they barely share a last name." We sat a while listening to forks and mugs around us, other families cracking jokes over eggs, not knowing how quiet breaks louder than glass. Tasha's phone vibrated face down. She didn't flip it. Small progress counts, even in hard conversations. I softened my voice. "Baby, when your daddy died, I promised God I'd keep what we built standing. Not for bragging rights. For you. For Lila. For the ordinary dignity of a key that fits your own door. Do you know how it felt to come home and see a plate that said managed by M. Lane on my porch?" Her shoulders dropped. She rubbed her thumb and forefinger together like she was trying to erase something only she could see. "I thought she would protect us. I thought if I did what she said, I could finally prove I could carry this." "You don't have to prove gravity to the ground," I said. "It already knows." She looked out at the river, blinking hard. "She said you were too stubborn. She said you wouldn't understand modern structures. She said if we delayed, we'd lose everything. And you believed the one holding the pen." "I believed the one who showed up at midnight with checks and answers," she whispered. "We let that hang because truth needs air." I reached into the folder for the last piece. A flowchart Priya had made, arrows neat as stitches. "This is where the money went," I said. "Mabel and tied to her foundation to the trust to checks with her name. Your signature is the bridge." I tapped the paper gently. "I won't ask whether you meant harm. I know you didn't. I'm asking whether you'll help me undo harm." Tasha read it like someone reading the recipe she has baked wrong for months, realizing every dense center was avoidable. When she finished, she folded the chart carefully and slid it back. "What happens if I say yes?" "Then you tell the truth, to the D's office, to the church board, to me," I said. "You hand over every login, every invoice, every text. You stop letting her speak through your mouth. And you stop touching anything with my name on it without me in the room." "And if I say no?" I drank my water. "Then I will still tell the truth. Only without your help." She closed her eyes and nodded, small and slow, as if the weight of what she'd helped build was finally sitting in her lap. "She'll come for me," she said. "You know that, right? She'll say I'm ungrateful. She'll say I stole from the future." "She already came for you," I said. "She used your hunger to eat my house." The wind off the river blew napkins from the next table. The waitress chased one, laughing, relief breaking the tension for a moment like a hand on a fevered forehead. Tasha placed my napkin back on my plate, the old small kindness that outlives disagreements. "I need to tell you something else," she said, voice almost gone. "The notary. I didn't know her. Mara set it up through a mailbox place. She said it was normal." He swallowed. But I signed as a witness. I did that. I own that. I nodded. Owning is the beginning of giving back. Thank you, I said. Now there's one more thing. Lila. Tasha flinched like I'd touched bone. Leave her out of it. I wish I could. But they put that child on a stage to thank the woman who tried to erase me. She deserves to hear the truth from the women who raised her, not from a courtroom echo. I don't know if she'll listen, Tasha said. She thinks Mara is everything. Then we make sure everything looks like the woman who tucked her in, not the one who tagged her in photos. We paid. Tasha reached for the check and I let her take it because letting your child carry a small thing can be the first lesson in carrying the right thing. On the sidewalk, the river sounded like paper being turned. Tasha hugged me like a daughter this time, not a defendant. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too, I said. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's packing fear a lunch and taking it to work. She half laughed, the old girl who used to crack jokes while she iced cupcakes peeking out. What do I do first? Send me every password by tonight, I said. Then text Mara and tell her I'm requesting a full accounting. Use those exact words. Full accounting. Watch how fast she calls. Tasha nodded. And if she threatens me? You forward it, I said. Threats belong to the record, not your chest. We parted at the corner. I walked slowly back to my car, the manila folder warm under my arm. When I looked over my shoulder, Tasha was still standing there, phone in hand, not dialing yet. Deciding. I said a grandmother prayer into the breeze. The kind with no commas, just a river of please. Back home, the porch plate glinted under noon sun, proud and wrong. I touched it once. Cold metal, borrowed authority, and then went inside to wait. The kitchen clock clicked a stubborn rhythm. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Then my phone buzzed. First message. A list of passwords, each one short as a confession. Second message. A screenshot of a text from Mara, neat and polite as always. Full accounting is unnecessary and disruptive. Let's discuss like family. Third message. Another text, sharper, a slip of the mask. If you undo this, we all lose. I forwarded both to Whitaker and Priya with one line, and there it is. Then I set a clean sheet of paper on the table and wrote a new heading in slow, careful print. Boundaries. Under it, a short list. No signatures without me present. No funds moved after 6 p.m. All meetings recorded. No more secrets dressed as solutions. I made tea, sat at the window, and watched the magnolia hold its white against the heat. I thought about how a tree survives storms by bending, not by breaking. I can bend enough to let my daughter back in. I will not bend for the woman who taught her how to steal my name. Evening brought a hush to the street, a kind of waiting that felt like stage lights warming before the curtain lifts. Somewhere downtown, a woman in pearls checked her calendar and sharpened her smile. Here an old oven ticked as it cooled, steady as a heartbeat that refused to quit. Tomorrow I would answer Mara Lane not with anger but with math, memory, and the law. And if she wanted to know where I found the strength, I'd tell her the truth. I didn't. The house did. The house that knows my hands. It started with a knock on my back door, sharp and familiar like the sound of reason arriving. Mr. Whitaker didn't believe in calling ahead. He said you don't warn termites before you spray. He came in holding a stack of printouts and his reading glasses dangling from one ear. Eve, he said, you ready to stir this pot? I poured him coffee without asking. It's already simmering, I told him. He spread his pages across my kitchen table, every sheet lined with numbers. Priya traced the money, he said. Maple and Tide Holdings, Magnolia Homestead Trust, and something called Sable Creek Advisors. They all use the same routing bank, the same timestamp patterns, and, this is my favorite, the same IP address for their online logins. He leaned back, grinning like a man who just found a gold tooth in the dirt. Our friend Mara isn't just borrowing names. She's the whole orchestra. The papers trembled in my hands. How do we prove it? You already have, he said. What we need now is a proper record. Statements, timestamps, notarized logs. Priya can do the forensics, but we'll have to file through the DA's Elder Exploitation Unit if we want the case to stick. The words hung in the air like thunder. Elder exploitation. I'd seen the term on pamphlets in the courthouse lobby, right beside brochures about wills and power of attorney. It sounded clinical, almost polite. Nothing polite about it, really. It meant someone thought you were too old to matter until they found out you owned something worth stealing. I swallowed hard. What happens if they call it a family misunderstanding? Whitaker smiled grimly. Then we let the receipts talk. That evening, Priya arrived with her laptop and a quiet focus that filled the room. She had a way of typing like every keystroke was a sentence in a confession she was coaxing out of numbers. I dug deeper, she said, turning the screen toward me. Here's your bakery account. See these entries? Maple and Tide received exactly what the bakery paid for, consulting. Same dates, same invoice IDs. Then Maple and Tide sent matching amounts, minus 2%, to the Magnolia Homestead Trust. That 2% went to Mara's personal account. Classic shell cascade. She clicked again and the chain appeared like a spider web of lines and arrows. This is theft-wearing business perfume, she said. The kind of thing prosecutors love because it looks complicated until you explain it in plain English. Plain English is all I've got left, I said. How do we start? First, you sign an affidavit stating you didn't authorize the trust. Then we file a civil complaint. After that, the DA's office decides whether to pursue criminal charges. You'll need a lawyer, someone who knows corporate fraud. I wrote down every word. Whitaker said, I've got a name for you, Michelle Robinson downtown. She handled a nursing home scam last year and made the papers eat out of her hand. We worked until midnight sorting papers into piles, deeds, bank transfers, correspondence. Priya showed me how to back up everything onto a flash drive. Don't email these, she warned. You forward them to yourself once, they're in the cloud forever. Keep it physical. Keep it close. When they left, I sat alone at the table watching the last bit of coffee swirl in the bottom of my mug. Outside, the magnolia tree rustled. It had lost half its blossoms since this started, but I took that as a sign. When a tree sheds, it's not dying, it's making space. The next morning I called the lawyer. Michelle's assistant sounded brisk but kind. Bring everything, she said. The more paper, the better. Before I left, I took a long look at my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back didn't look broken, she looked seasoned. My mother used to say wrinkles are just laugh lines that refuse to lie flat. I put on Harold's watch, though it no longer kept time. I didn't need the hour, just the courage. Downtown Savannah was alive with traffic and promise. Michelle Robinson's office was on the 10th floor of a glass tower that caught the sky like a mirror. The receptionist led me to a conference room with a view of the river. When Michelle walked in, she carried herself like calm after lightning. Short haircut, simple suit, eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Carter, she said, shaking my hand, Whitaker told me about your case. Let's start at the beginning. I laid out the folder, the charts, the deed copies, the mortgage receipt. She flipped through each one, nodding slightly. You have the whole trail. This is good. We can argue both civil and criminal angles. Financial misrepresentation, fraudulent conveyance, and breach of fiduciary duty. She looked up at me. You understand this might take months? I've been building things my whole life, I said. Bread doesn't rise in a minute. She smiled. Then we'll bake them slowly. Michelle outlined the plan. File an injunction to freeze the trust's bank accounts before Mara could move assets, subpoena her financials, and notify the district attorney's office. Once the freeze is in place, she said, we'll send a demand letter. That's when you'll find out who your real allies are. When I left the office, I felt taller. The air tasted different. Less heavy, more like rain that hadn't decided whether to fall. I walked past the courthouse steps and imagined Harold standing there, hat tilted, saying, You did good, Eve. By the time I reached home, dusk had settled. The magnolia glowed pale in the streetlight. I set Michelle's card on the counter, then called Tasha. She answered on the second ring. Mama, I talked to Mara. She says she can fix this before lawyers get involved. Kept my tone even. Tell her the lawyer's already involved. Mama, she's scared you'll destroy everything. She should have thought of that before she tried to rebuild it in her name. There was silence on the line, then a quiet sniff. I'm sorry, Tasha whispered. I know, I said. But sorry's not the same as undone. We hung up and I wrote another line in my notebook. When the truth is quiet, liars get loud. That night I couldn't sleep, so I sat on the porch listening to crickets. Whitaker's words echoed in my head. Let the receipts talk. They would. They already were. The paper rustled in the night breeze from the open window. A soft chorus of truth waiting its turn to speak. Tomorrow would be long. Phone calls, affidavits, copies. But I was ready. I wasn't the woman who got thanked out of her own story anymore. I was the one writing the next chapter. And somewhere across town, I knew Mara Lane felt the air shift too, the way all architects do when a foundation starts to crack. By Tuesday morning, the air itself felt charged, like the city was holding its breath. I sat by the window with my notebook, waiting for Michelle's call, and watching sunlight crawl slowly across Harold's old chair. My phone buzzed right on time. "Mrs. Carter," Michelle said, her voice steady and direct. "We served the injunction. The judge signed off on freezing the Magnolia Homestead Trust accounts until discovery is complete. Mara can't move a dime without us seeing it." I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you. We'll need to meet again," she continued. "The notary is the key. We've located her name in state records, Darlene Keats, and there's something off about her. She's not registered at any business address listed on your paperwork. I want you to come with me when we meet her." "I'll be there," I said. That afternoon, Michelle picked me up in her silver sedan. The courthouse and the glass towers fell behind us as we crossed into an older part of town. Warehouses, cracked pavement, a strip mall with a liquor store and a mobile notary sign flickering half-lit. The name painted across the window was Sable Creek Advisors LLC. Michelle parked and gave me a small digital recorder. "For our safety," she said. "Just keep it running. You're not here to argue. Just listen." Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee and toner. Behind the counter sat a woman in her 50s with a tight bun and eyes that darted faster than thought. Darlene Keats. When Michelle introduced us, she offered a thin smile that never reached her eyes. "Mrs. Carter," she said. "Pleasure to finally meet you. I remember notarizing for you months ago. Hospital discharge, right?" I studied her face. "I was under anesthesia." "Oh no, ma'am," she said quickly. "You were alert. You said you trusted your daughter and Mississippi Lane to handle things." Signed right there in blue ink. Michelle placed a folder on the counter and slid it forward. "This your notary journal?" Darlene hesitated. "Well, copies of it, yes." "Why?" Michelle flipped to a page marked April 12th. "Here. Witnesses, Sandra Milne and Jerome Dole. Both unverified. Signer, Evelyn Carter. Signature slants right, looped E, full pressure." She placed a second paper beside it. "My driver's license copy. Mrs. Carter's signatures always slant left. See the loop direction? Opposite. If this is hers, you'd better explain the handwriting." Darlene's face tightened. "Look, sometimes people sign different when they're tired." Michelle leaned in. "Or when someone else signs for them." Silence filled the room. The hum of the copy machine became a heartbeat. I took a slow breath. "Darlene," I said softly, "you remember my daughter, don't you? And the woman she was with that day." She looked down at her coffee cup. "Mississippi Lane said it was urgent. She said you gave permission by phone." "I didn't." Her shoulders sagged. "She said it was all legal, just backdating a trust for tax reasons. I didn't think." "That's your problem," Michelle said. "You didn't think, and now you've got 3 forged documents under your commission number." Darlene's hands trembled. "I didn't mean harm." Michelle turned off the recorder and spoke firmly. "Then you'll testify. You'll say exactly what happened, when, and who was in that hospital room." Darlene nodded quickly. "Yes. Yes, ma'am." When we walked out, the sunlight hit like freedom. Michelle exhaled. "That's enough to break her foundation in half. Once we file this, Mara will realize you're not bluffing." But the day wasn't over. Back home, I brewed tea and sat by the window thinking. The notary's voice replayed in my mind. She said it was urgent. Urgent to steal. Urgent to silence me. Urgent because women like Mara believe speed equals power. But I've lived long enough to know patience is the weapon they never expect. At dusk, my phone rang again. It was Whitaker. "Got a friend at the DA's office," he said. "They ran Darlene's commission. Suspended last year for irregular logs. That woman wasn't supposed to notarize anything, let alone a deed. So everything she touched is invalid," he said. "That means your transfer never legally happened. The house is still yours." I pressed my hand to my chest. "Say that again." "You heard me. We'll need the court to formalize it, but on paper your name never left the deed." Tears blurred my vision before I realized they were there. Whit, how can I ever? He chuckled. Don't thank me yet. This story's just halfway baked. But it's smelling good. Later that night I wrote in my notebook, pens don't lie. People do. I underlined it twice. The phone buzzed again, Tasha. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was shaky. Mama, Mara knows you met the notary. She's furious. She said you're trying to humiliate her. I'm not trying, I said. I'm succeeding. She said she'll call her lawyer. Tell her to bring a magnifying glass, I said. We'll be talking about signatures. Tasha whispered, I think she's scared. Good, I said softly. Fear is what people feel when the truth starts catching up. After the call, I stood at the window watching lightning blink over the river. The magnolia tree swayed in rhythm with the thunder, its branches strong, its petals scattered but still blooming. I whispered to Harold's memory, we're almost there, love. Almost. Then I sat down, opened the folder, and wrote a single new line beneath all the others. Tomorrow I tell the church who they're really thanking. Because if they wounded me in public, I'd let the truth heal in public too. Sunday came heavy and gold, like the air itself was dressed for judgment. The church lot was already full when I pulled in. My palms were slick on the steering wheel, not from fear. No, I was done with fear. But from the strange calm that comes before a storm you've invited yourself. The sanctuary smelled the way it always had. Lilies, hymn books, and the faint sweetness of old wood polish. Choir robes rustled up front, and the pastor's voice boomed cheerful, steady. Today we celebrate legacy, he said. That word again. Legacy. The one they'd used to steal from me. I sat near the back, hat tilted low, papers folded neatly in my purse like holy scripture of a different kind. I wasn't here to shout. I was here to show. When they reached the announcements, Pastor Harris smiled toward the front pew where Mara Lane sat glowing in cream silk, her pearls catching the morning light. Tasha sat beside her, face pale but composed, and Lila stood just behind them holding a basket of programs. Before we close, he said, Mississippi Lane has an update on the Magnolia Homestead Initiative. Let's give her a hand. Applause filled the air like rain on tin. Mara stood, smiled the smile she'd practiced, and took the microphone. Good morning, family, she said, her voice honeyed smooth. This project began as a vision to preserve what our elders built. Mrs. Carter's beautiful home will soon serve as a community resource. That's when I stood up. My cane tapped once on the wooden floor. Excuse me, Pastor, I said. The room quieted. Before this woman uses my home as a sermon illustration, perhaps the family should hear whose name is actually on the deed. Mara froze, her polished composure slipping for a blink. Mrs. Carter, she said, still smiling, of course we're grateful for your cooperation. Cooperation, I said. I call it forgery. Gasps rippled through the room. The choir turned. Pastor Harris blinked, caught between duty and disbelief. I have here, I said, opening my purse, the original mortgage receipt dated 2008, paid in full under Harold and Evelyn Carter. And here, I held up another paper, the fraudulent deed notarized under a suspended license. The notary herself has confessed. My lawyer filed the injunction Friday. The court has already frozen all Magnolia Homestead accounts. A hush spread so complete that even the fans stopped creaking. Mara's smile died slow. You're confused, Evelyn. These are complicated documents. Not complicated, I said. Just criminal. Tasha rose from her seat, voice trembling. Mama, please. No, baby, I said softly. You sit. You told the truth once, that's all I asked. The pastor approached, brow furrowed. Sister Carter, is this matter private? Not anymore, I said. They took what was private and paraded it on this very stage. I'm just returning the courtesy. Someone whispered from the pews, Lord have mercy. Another said, I knew something didn't sit right. Mara's voice hardened. You're making a spectacle. Spectacle. I stepped closer. No, Mississippi Lane. A spectacle is what you made when you accepted applause for a house you forged papers to own. He took a step back. Her pearls trembled against her throat. I laid the final page on the pulpit. Darlene Keats's signed affidavit. The notary admits she falsified my signature at your request. You said I authorized it by phone. I was unconscious. You called it paperwork. I call it theft in Sunday clothes. The pastor cleared his throat, face heavy with disappointment. Mississippi Lane, do you have anything to say? For a long moment she didn't move. Then her jaw tightened. All of this can be explained, she said. The trust was to protect assets. The community doesn't need drama. I smiled faintly. Drama happens when truth walks in and pride doesn't have a chair. Lila, my granddaughter, whispered, "Grandma?" Her voice cracked, the way children sound when they realize adults bleed. I looked at her, all bright eyes and confusion. "It's all right, baby," I said. "We're just putting things back where they belong." Mara tried to speak again, but Tasha rose. "Stop," she said quietly, then louder. "Stop, Mara." She faced the congregation, tears streaking down her cheeks. "She's telling the truth. I was there. I signed what she told me to sign. Thought I was helping. I didn't know she forged my mother's name." The room gasped again. Different this time, softer, like air finally exhaling after years of holding breath. Mara's face turned rigid. "Tasha, be careful. You'll regret this." "I already do," Tasha said. The pastor nodded slowly. "Then this matter will be turned over to the authorities," he said. "And we will pray for discernment." I placed the papers gently back into my purse. "Pastor, I don't need prayers for discernment. I've already found it. But I'll take prayers for peace." Then I turned to the congregation, those same faces that once nodded to me in pity, and said, "Family doesn't steal legacies. And silence is the thief's first helper. Don't let anyone make you sign away your worth because they talk sweet or dress well. If they love you, they'll protect your name, not hide behind it." A few people clapped, timid at first, then louder. The choir stood in awkward unity. Pastor Harris bowed his head. "May the truth set us free," he said quietly. As I left, Lila ran after me. "Grandma, I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know what they did." I touched her cheek. "Now you do, baby. That's enough. You can't fix what you don't face." Outside, the morning light hit the magnolia tree across the yard. The petals were falling again, soft and steady, like the house was listening. I sat in my car and let the tears come, not the broken kind, but the clean kind, the kind that washed dust off old roots. When I started the engine, my phone buzzed. A message from Michelle. "D's office just confirmed. Criminal charges pending. The house is officially yours." I smiled and whispered, "Home, Harold. We're home again." I looked up at the church spire, sharp against the blue, and said quietly, "Let them clap now if they want. I've already heard the applause that matters." That afternoon, the house was silent, the kind of silence that doesn't hurt anymore, just breathes. I sat at the kitchen table, papers neatly stacked in a folder, stamped case closed, preliminary order. Outside, cicadas buzzed like tiny applause that didn't need a stage. It's a strange thing, getting your life back. You expect trumpets, parades, a headline maybe. But all I felt was stillness, soft and wide like forgiveness. Tasha came by after sunset, wearing a sweatshirt and tired eyes. She knocked once, then twice, the way she used to when she came home past curfew as a teenager. I opened the door. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she held out a brown envelope. "The bakery accounts," she said. "Every password, every ledger, everything I gave her access to." I nodded, stepping aside. "You hungry?" She gave a small, broken smile. "Always." I warmed leftover stew while she sat at the same table where we'd fought, prayed, and laughed for decades. The air smelled of time and something older. Peace maybe trying to find its way back in. "I told Lila the truth," she said finally. "Everything." She cried, but she understood. She said she wants to rebuild the bakery the right way. "She will," I said. "This time she'll know whose recipe she's using." Tasha rubbed her forehead. "Mama, I don't know if you can ever forgive me." I poured her a bowl and placed it in front of her. "Forgiveness isn't a gate you walk through. It's a bridge we build from both sides." Tears welled in her eyes. "I almost lost you." I reached across the table, took her hand. "You didn't lose me. You just stopped looking for me. I've been right here the whole time." We ate quietly for a while, the spoons tapping a slow rhythm. It reminded me of Harold humming in the kitchen, of late nights kneading dough when we were young and poor and stubbornly happy. After dinner we sat on the porch. The magnolia tree shimmered under moonlight. Tasha leaned against the railing and said, "You know, I think Daddy would be proud." "He'd be relieved," I said. He always said no thief could outlast a woman who writes everything down. We both laughed, soft and weary. A car drove past, headlights washing across the house. For the first time in months, I didn't flinch. The brass plate on the porch had been replaced that morning. The Carter residence, EST 1979. No trusts. No fancy titles. Just our name. Inside the phone rang. It was Michelle. Mrs. Carter, the DA's office will move forward with charges. Darlene's statement sealed it. Mara won't be smiling for a long while. I exhaled slow. I'm not looking for revenge, Michelle. Just restoration. And you got it, she said. Congratulations. You're officially whole again. After the call, I stood at the doorway and looked around the living room. The framed photos on the mantel, weddings, graduations, birthdays, seemed brighter somehow, as if the dust of deceit had finally settled. Tasha came to stand beside me. You know what Lila asked? She said. She asked if you'd teach her the old honey bun recipe. She said she wants to sell them at school under your name. I smiled. That's how legacy should sound, sweet, not stolen. We stood there a long time. No words, just the quiet hum of belonging returning to its rightful home. Later, after Tasha left, I sat alone on the porch. Fireflies blinked across the yard, tiny lamps for memories I wasn't ready to put away. I thought about Mara, about the woman who thought she could rewrite my story with forged ink and soft words. I didn't hate her. I pitied her. There's no worse loneliness than living inside a lie that no longer fits. I wrote one last note in my yellow notebook. The truth doesn't shout. It waits. And when it finally speaks, even liars listen. Then I closed it, tucked it beside Harold's watch, and whispered, "We're done, love." The magnolia petals drifted down like slow snow, covering the porch rail, the steps, even my shoes. It looked like the world was trying to decorate for peace. Tomorrow I'd reopen the bakery with Lila. I'd hang a new sign, Carter's Oven. Home is never for sale. And when people came for honey buns, they'd get more than sweetness. They'd taste the truth that survived everything. I smiled to the dark, letting the night fold around me like a shawl. The house remembers, I whispered. And so do I. Morning came soft and slow, with that kind of light that forgives. The air smelled like flour and beginnings. I was back in the bakery, sleeves rolled up, hands deep in dough for the first time in years. The hum of the mixer blended with gospel radio, and for once the song felt like it belonged here again. Lila stood beside me, hair tied back with a red ribbon, carefully lining muffin tins. "Grandma," she said, smiling, "how did you ever do all this alone?" I chuckled. "Baby, I didn't. The house helped. Every creak, every shelf, every sound in these walls. They all worked with me. You just have to listen close enough." She laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds like redemption. Tasha was by the register balancing accounts. I watched her jot numbers carefully, whispering them to herself, her posture different now, no longer hurried or afraid. It's strange how humility can make a person beautiful again. The first customers arrived just after 8. Neighbors, church members, even the mailman who'd been delivering my legal papers all summer. They all wanted the same thing, a honey bun and a smile. I gave them both. By noon, the open sign hung steady in the window, and sunlight poured over the counter like a blessing. I stepped outside to catch my breath. Across the street, the courthouse dome gleamed, and for a moment, I felt a tug in my chest. Not bitterness, just recognition. Quiet justice doesn't wear handcuffs or headlines. It walks like peace, speaks like truth, and rests easy at night. Mara Lane's trial made the evening news, but I didn't watch. The world already knew what it needed to. The judge ruled in our favor. Full restitution, public apology, assets seized. They called it a victory. I called it balance. Whitaker stopped by with a newspaper tucked under his arm. "Well, Miss Eve," he said, grinning, "looks like justice finally paid its tab." I smiled. "Took her long enough." He laughed and pointed toward the sign above the door. "That new tagline of yours, home is never for sale. I like that. You thinking about franchising?" I swatted at him with a towel. "Don't start. Let me enjoy this piece while it's still warm." After he left, I sat on the bench outside the bakery, the same bench where Harold and I used to drink sweet tea after closing. The magnolia tree across the road swayed, petals scattering like confetti for a celebration nobody needed to announce. For a long while, I just listened, to laughter inside, to footsteps on the sidewalk, to the steady hum of the oven that had outlived betrayal. I thought of every woman who'd ever been erased in plain sight, every mother thanked in silence, every wife left with nothing but memory. I spoke softly, but I spoke for all of them. They can take the papers, the title, the applause, but they can't take the truth. Lila came out with a tray of warm honey buns. "Grandma, taste this one," she said, holding it out. I bit into it, sweet, soft, perfect. "You did good, baby," I told her. "That's exactly how it's supposed to taste." "What's the secret?" she asked. I smiled. "Patience. And the courage to start again." She nodded like she understood, and maybe she did. Children always see more than we think. As the sun began to set, Tasha joined us on the porch. "You know," she said quietly, "when Mara first came around, I thought she was power. But this," she gestured at the bakery, the street, the sky, "this feels like strength." "Power takes," I said. "Strength builds." She reached for my hand, and for the first time in a long time we just sat there, 3 generations breathing in rhythm, the past no longer a wound but a root. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Harold, it's done. We built something that even lies couldn't tear down." The wind moved through the magnolia branches like an answer. When night came, I turned off the bakery lights one by one. The neon glow faded, but the peace stayed. I locked the door, pocketed the key, and stood there a while watching the sign. "Carter's Oven, home is never for sale." That's when I realized justice had never been about courts or judges. It had been about reclaiming my name, my story, and my peace, quietly, firmly, completely. And if anyone ever asked what I learned through it all, I'd tell them this. Betrayal can bruise your heart, but it can't rewrite your character. Age doesn't make you weak. It makes you patient enough to watch truth catch up. And legacy isn't what they take from you. It's what still stands when they're gone. I smiled to the night, locked arms with peace, and walked home, slow, steady, and free. So if you've stayed with me through this story, remember this. Quiet justice doesn't come with noise. It comes when you finally stop running and let truth do the walking. If this story found a piece of you, if it reminded you that strength can whisper and still be heard, subscribe. Because there are more stories like this, more truths that deserve a calm voice, and more hearts that need to know they're not alone.